Hey everybody, Pete Griffin here, bassist for Zappa Play Zappa and Death Clock and my band Griffin Labs, amongst many, many other things. Here to show you the awesome new dual bass station preamp pedal from Providence pedals. It's a really, really cool, useful device that lets you either balance the tone and volume of two different basses, or it can be used as a separate EQ pedal for a single bass. So it's a really, really useful thing, and it sounds great, which is, of course, what we're going for here. So I'll show you some of the details of it right now. Okay, so I guess I'll start off by showing you how to use this pedal when you're just using one bass. A lot of times these days I play gigs where I'm not even bringing an amp and I'm not even using a backline. I'm just going directly into the house and either getting my tone through in-ear monitors or from a monitor. It's sort of the future of bass playing these days. And having a preamp like this with such a nice EQ on it really kind of helps that. It means that instead of lugging a giant amp, you lug this nice little lightweight pedal and you have all the tonal options you want right there. So, just taking a 77 Jazz with stock pickups and everything, plug it into the thing and start playing, and even flat sounds great to me. It definitely adds a little bit more warmth than if I had just plugged directly into the DI that I have going here. But then from there you can start messing with the knobs, and you know, that's a nice, decent jazz bass sound, but I kind of want a little more bottom end. So let's go with an extreme setting of the bass knob and try turning it up almost all the way here, just to hear what that sounds like. Really kind of nice, even for such an extreme setting on a bass knob. I'm not usually one for turning knobs to extreme settings on an amp or on a bass or on a preamp or anything like that, because I think you should the sound should be in the bass and in your fingers. But for something like that, it's still kind of nice even at a higher setting, but then you just kind of dial it back and it gives you a little bit more bottom end presence and it sounds good. Next, I always have issues with students where they say, hey, I've got my amp up all the way and or I can't turn up anymore because the sound guy's going to yell at me, but I still can't hear a note I'm playing. So I always tell them, don't mess with the bass knob on your amp to try to hear yourself better. Mess with the mid-range knob, and that's really where you're going to find your own personal kind of sound, and you can mix it against the kick drum a little better, or some low keyboards, or some down-tuned guitars that might be getting in your way. You got to find that mid-range frequency where nobody else is, and then that's where you occupy, and that's how you can kind of stick out in the mix a little better. Where this pedal helps that is not only does it have a mid-range knob, it has a mid-range frequency selector. So if you want kind of more of an old school, low-mid kind of warm sound, you turn the mid-range frequency selector knob down and then turn the actual mid-range knob up. So once again, we'll go a little extreme just to hear it, but here's a lower mid kind of sound. So really kind of nice, kind of a Motown-y sort of thing, very thumpy and subby. I haven't touched the tone knob on the bass at all. It's still pretty much all the way up, but it takes off some of the high end just by putting in some of the low mid. So we just dial that back a little bit. But if you're looking for more of a modern tone, a little more of the higher mid-range, you just take that same mid-range frequency selector knob and turn it to the other side where it's more in the high mid-range, and this is what that sounds like. So a little more finger attack, a little more growl to it, a little kind of grindier tone. It's really kind of cool. That would be more for almost like a punk rock thing if I was going to play with a pick or anything, you know. pick sound to jump out a little more. So having that mid-frequency selector knob is a huge thing, rather than just having a mid-range knob locked at a certain frequency. It lets you find that particular frequency that you're looking for, that the bass will exist in, that nothing else is existing in. So we'll dial that back to a more kind of usable sound there. And then of course treble. A lot of people use treble to get a little more of the brightness on the tone, obviously. This bass has fairly dead strings right now, so if I wanted a little more kind of zing from the top end, I would just turn up the treble. Once again, let's try a slightly higher frequency, a slightly higher setting, just to hear what it sounds like. So once again, even at a higher setting, it's not harsh sounding, it's not too clicky, but it gives you more of that sort of string noise, a little more of the high end. That's what treble does. So once again, dial that back to a sort of more usable sound, and then just with a few tweaks of the knobs, I've got what I think is a pretty great jazz bass tone directly into the system here.